Hey y'all, welcome to Dungeon Master Solutions, and this is the campaign diary for September 2019. Campaign 1, the Thieves Guild. The group had joined a mysterious Thieves Guild that they know nothing of in the city of Golden Harbor. They were told by their handler to make 2,000 gold in order to gain officership and learn about the organization. Up to now, they've been traveling, running from war, and getting trapped in a place that I call the Shadow Realm. It's a dark and evil place between worlds. Not quite the Underdark, but similar. And yes, I totally ripped the name off of Yu-Gi-Oh! They've been able to make some cash, but they were still short by over 1,000 gold. So they took a bounty to hunt down a mysterious entity known as Crocodrilus. They followed the crocodiles in the canals down to a sewer dungeon in search of Crocodrilus. They came to learn that he was a crocodile man abducting sick children in the southern part of the city. After mowing down some crocs and saving some kobold sewer workers, they found their way to the prison holding the children, being guarded by croc mutants. They fought their way through them and 2 more rooms of croc guards. One group feeding pet crocs, and the other at a very disgusting dinner. Eventually they made it to the puzzle, a large cylinder sewer water room. This large cylinder room has 3 levels. Each level had a small room off of the side of it that had a puzzle. At each successful solving of the puzzle, the water level would be lowered, and they could access the next level down lower. And eventually they made it to the bottom room, that of the laboratory of Crocodrilus. They come to find out that Crocodrilus is saving the dying children's lives by turning them into croc mutants. In this room, they see several large vat/coffin type things, out of which comes more croc mutants. Crocodrilus attacks, and they fight. Eventually, they're able to kill him and scare off the remaining mutants in the sewer system. They were able to grab the body and get out of the sewer back to the inn, and they were able to claim the reward, the 1,000 gold, which is exactly what they needed to level up. And so now for my assessment. First off, I will tell you a little bit about an experience system I'm trying out for this campaign. They arrived at the city at level 3, and I told them that they would be receiving their officership, as I mentioned, when they acquired 2,000 gold. How I ended up handling this situation was when they acquired 1,000 gold, I gave them level 4, and 2,000 gold put them at level 5. In my personal opinion, I've been starting to shy away from the XP system. It drags a lot, in my opinion. I found that if you do the opposite, if you level by milestones, you really gain the advantage of the satisfaction of accomplishing something and getting rewarded for it. I think my players are enjoying it. I might discuss more about this in a future video and talk about short-term rewards and long-term rewards in and outside of the game. And now I'll talk about how it went. And so the session went well. Specifically a good part that I think went well was I got to put a fun moral dilemma in front of them. The situation of their target being a quote-unquote evil guy, a bad guy who's capturing kids and turning them into mutants, but at the same time, they had to contend with the fact that he was more or less saving their lives. These giant crocodile mutants that they'd been fighting, they come to find out, are actually have the minds of children, and they had to wrestle with that. Especially one of my players, even made the attempt to sway Crocodrilus to try and turn him away, but unfortunately, when weapons come out, usually they don't go back in until everyone's dead. On one side, that is. Now, as a critique upon myself, the puzzles I put in front of my players, they enjoyed them, but perhaps I gave too many. As I said, they had to solve 2 different separate puzzles to get to the final room in this dungeon. I presented one of them was a sort of a mathematical puzzle where they had to figure out a sequence of numbers. One of my players, surprisingly, had a formula to figure it out that even I didn't realize. And so they were able to, after a little bit of pain, they were able to get it knocked out. Then hitting them up immediately with one more puzzle, that was a bad move. I think you should, if you're going to use multiple puzzles in a dungeon, you should spread them out. Finally, I will mention the types of monsters I was using for this dungeon. And that is, I used, for Crocodrilus, I used a modified giant crocodile from the Monster Manual, page 324. The crocs that I used were out of the Monster Manual, page 320. And the mutants are Category 1 Crasises, I don't know what the plural of that is, from the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, page 210. And now for the Motorcycle Club campaign. The club's secondary base of operations in the town of Smalton was burned down by the northern barbarians that have taken up residence in the city. They've had to return to their base out in the sticks, but it wasn't long before they found out that their lands were not cooperating. They had to make their way to one of the villages from where they get their supplies. They had to come in and re-solidify their control over the town, that is, by killing the kobold invaders that had been stealing the supplies that were meant for them. However, they discover info about the kobolds. More specifically, they find info about their leader and the possible location of said leader. They ride to the swamplands, where they square off against a hag and some hook horrors, and they discover info pointing to a place known as the Fire Crags and a dragonborn lady known as Mistress Germath. Then Blades, my kobold NPC, told them a little more about the legend of her and her evil, and her sisters, a group known as the Claws of Tiamat. The group rides to the Fire Crags in search of the Flame-Tongue Bastion, is what I called it. It's my reskinned Bastion of the Frost Lord. Reskinned, as I said, with brimstone instead of ice, and a dragon instead of a yeti. I usually don't care much for using pre-made dungeons, but I wanted to give my players a unique series of puzzle challenges, and I think they enjoyed it. Anyway, they fought and killed Dramath, learned more about the plans of the Claws, and their kobold friend managed to recruit the kobold hordes. And so they rode out of the Fire Crags with an army of kobolds at their backs, all riding upon their cute little lizard mounts. And at the very end of the session, I had them ride up over a hill and look down into a valley and see a large number of the northern barbarians traveling to the town. They had to make the choice if they wanted to ride down the innocent civilians or not. My inspiration for this was certainly the warg attack from the second Lord of the Rings movies. Of course, in this situation, the quote-unquote good guys are the warg riders. And now for my assessment. Something good that worked out was my players have been talking about they want forces here in the country that they're in. And this is sort of getting them stoked. They were very happy, finally, to receive some forces. And I think they're going to have a lot of fun training and utilizing their new army. And my only real complaint about how this session went was that I didn't get to use my dragon. Of course, if you've read the Bastion of the Frost Lord, you know that the Yeti is asleep. And they have to sneak away a key. And indeed, my players were able to sneak away the key from the sleeping dragon, but boy, I should have liked to have used it. And finally, the monsters that I used. I used, for Mistress Dramath, I used a half-dragon out of the Monster Manual, page 180. I gave her some modifications, of course, like a Misty Step that did AoE fire damage. I used a Dragon Wormling, from the Monster Manual, more specifically a red dragon wormling from page 98, and I used modified Magmins from the Monster Manual, page 212, and they were kind of the half-dragons minions. And now for the Spelljammer diary. The group had already spent some significant time on the ice planet of Himtickle. They had participated in a Yeti hunting festival, they defended a small snowy village from cultists, and they met an ancient dwarven king, this being the quest from him to defeat 3 key holders across the galactic neighborhood known as the Melfin Expanse, and to cleanse the ancient dwarven place called the Admantium Tomb of the ancient dwarven lords. Before they got started on that, though, my assassin, her name is Iso, the shifter rogue, she had an assassination contract on the mayor of the planet's capital. They show up to the town, and after spending some time shopping in the Magic District and buying some Spelljammer parts, they discovered some disturbing things about the city. Mass homeless protests in the streets, the destruction of dozens of businesses, and a frost giant police force executing people on the front lawn of the mayoral home. After that, Iso engaged her solo mission, creeping among the secret anti-government societies in the city, and an eventual stealth mission into the mayor home itself, where she learned everything she needed to from the frightened mayor's wife. She learned, of course, that the mayor had changed. He locked some sort of ancient power, and he would be found at an ancient tower in the city known as the Blizzard Spear. And so, under the cover of snow and clouds, they flew their Spelljammer to the top of the Blizzard Spear. Through the different rooms, they discovered strange humanoid beasts, and they endeavored to cure them by using small magical orbs, of course through arcana checks. They freed them, eventually, and they fought through more of the dragonborn soldiers of the mayor, and eventually, of course, one ice giant officer and some priestesses. And finally, the mayor himself. He was wielding one of these magic orbs, and at the last, he ran out. Iso followed him. She saw him talking to a strange creature, who stole his orb and stepped through a portal. Stay tuned for what that creature might be. Iso did the old assassination, and the group escaped back up through the tower just in time for the morning ice giants to smash the Blizzard Spear to pieces. And now it's time for my review. The session, I think, was a success. My players enjoyed it, making their way down through the Blizzard Spear. The inspiration for this tower was a story, a Conan the Barbarian story known as the Tower of the Elephant. A lot of kooky, psychedelic, far-out magic going on. I won't get into too much detail because it's a great story and you should read it. But my major takeaway, my lesson from this session was don't be afraid to crank up the difficulty. My Spelljammer campaign has 6 players in it when everyone shows up. And of course, several of them are quite the metagamers. They really like to go all out. Moving forward, I really have to look at using stronger bad guys. And I'm afraid to swamp them, but I can't. I have to really hit him with the hammer to present him a battle challenge. And finally, the monsters. I used the beast people that they were trying to free. I was just using modified beasts from the monster manual, looking from page 317 to 341. I used a frost giant from the monster manual, page 155. And finally, for the mayor himself, used one of the precognitive mages from the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, page 228. In conclusion, this was my campaign diary for September 2019. Please feel free to leave a comment with any questions you may have about what I've presented here today. See you next time.